Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. We just passed 480 and 490 subs. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I'm so grateful for all the support, and I hope I can continue to make great content you guys will enjoy in the future. Now, the Final Four is coming up this weekend. March Madness 2023 is almost over. You can't ask for a much better March Madness than this. There's been so many upsets, and there have been great games galore all throughout the tournament, but now we're down to the Final Four. I'm going to go over who I think will win these Final Four games and who will be moving on to the National Championship games. Now, you look at Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. That's the first matchup, and nobody thought either of these teams would be here. Florida Atlantic is the 9 seed, and San Diego State's a 5 seed. Obviously, the Aztecs were a great team in the Mountain West this year. Brian Dutcher did a fantastic job with that squad, but Florida Atlantic is the team no one expected whatsoever to be in this position, but Dusty May has done a great job as the Florida Atlantic Owls head coach, and he should be in line for a big bump in the coaching realm of college basketball and be able to get a Power 5 head coaching job soon. Even if it's not this year, it definitely will be the next, but he's done a great job with the Owls. And looking at Florida Atlantic, they're 35-3 and they're 18-2 in Conference USA this year. They've only lost 3 times this season, and yes, they play in a smaller conference, but that's why they got a 9 seed, because they barely lost any bad teams, and they're just a team that wins. They know how to win. They found a way to beat Memphis by 1 point in the round of 64 on a shot at the end of the game with 2 seconds left, and they were able to win that game. And then they've just been rolling through the tournament. They've been finding ways to win, and they got a huge win over Tennessee in the Sweet 16 and a close 3-point win over the Kansas State Wildcats that a lot of people thought would be able to beat Florida Atlantic, but the Owls found a way to win, and now they're here in the Final Four. And John L. Davis, he's averaging 13.9 points per game. He's been a great player for the Owls this year, but it's not just him. They have a lot of players that are really good contributors, but John L. Davis is definitely the best scorer for Florida Atlantic. But they also have Elijah Martin averaging 13.1 points per game, a really good second option for Florida Atlantic when John L. Davis isn't having his best game. He can really fill up the stat sheet as well. Vladislav Golden, he's averaging 10.3 points per game, and Golden is a really good center. He's 7 feet tall, and he does all the dirty work for the Owls, getting rebounds. He can even knock down a 3 as well, and that will be a really tough matchup for San Diego State because the Aztecs do not have a 7-foot center to probably be able to slow down Golden, but still, it's going to be very interesting to see all around. This should be a great defensive battle, but I do think Golden could be a mismatch nightmare a bit for San Diego State. Nicholas Boyd averages 8.9 points, and Michael Forrest averages 8.4 points per game for the Florida Atlantic Owls. And the Owls also have great rotation players in Brian Greenlee, Giancarlo Rosado, Brandon Weatherspoon, and Jalen Gaffney, and they all average between 4 and 7 points per game. And the Owls have been a great offensive team this year. They average 78 points per game, and on defense, they've only been giving up 65.1 points per game. I think that's definitely a good recipe for success because the Owls are a much better offensive team than most teams in college basketball, and their defense is one of the better teams in college basketball as well. That is always a sign of a great basketball team when you are really good in both categories, and I think that's definitely going to help out Florida Atlantic in this basketball game. But they're going to have a tall task ahead of them because San Diego State, they're mid-major as well, just like Florida Atlantic, but they're a great basketball team out of the Mountain West, and they're 31-6 and 15-3 in the Mountain West Conference this season. And Brian Dutcher, again, is a great head basketball coach. He's been the Aztecs head coach for a few years now, and the Aztecs lost out on a massive chance to have a deep run in March Madness back in 2020 when the virus shut down the season because the Aztecs were so good that year. They probably would have been a 1 or a 2 seed that season, but this year San Diego State is making up for everything that they lost that season, and Matt Bradley's been a big reason why, averaging 12.5 points per game. Still, the California transfer has been a huge reason for San Diego State's success the last few seasons. He's a great basketball player. He's a good defender. He's just a big-bodied guard, and he gets buckets. But what makes San Diego State such a dangerous basketball team is not Matt Bradley. It's the amount of depth the Aztecs have on their team, the amount of players that can score the basketball. Darian Trammell's averaging 9.9 points per game, but this tournament, he's already had a couple 20-point games. He's playing fantastic basketball, and he's even outscored Matt Bradley on several occasions, been a big reason for San Diego State's success. Lamont Butler's averaging 8.7 points per game, and then after that, you've got Jaden Ledee, Micah Parrish, Kashad Johnson, and Nathan Mensah that all average between 7 and 8 points per game. Nathan Mensah, he will be tasked to stop Vlad Golden of Florida Atlantic. He's a really good center, Nathan Mensah is, on defense, and pretty solid on the offensive side of the ball as well, but he is a better defender. He will have a size disadvantage advantage on Golden, but I do think he will be able to slow him down a relative amount. But still, looking at San Diego State's roster, it doesn't end there. They also have Adam Seco and Aguak Arap that are also both really solid contributors on the offensive and defensive side of the ball as well. And both these teams are really deep, but I think San Diego State definitely has the depth advantage. They have a lot more players that can score the basketball, and they mix and match their players all throughout the game so they can stay fresh. And on the offensive side of the ball, San Diego State's averaging 71.5 points per game. That's definitely not as much as Florida Atlantic, but they haven't needed it this year because they're such a great defensive team, only giving up 62.9 points per game. So judging by both of these basketball teams, this should be a dogfight, a game that goes down to the wire. Both these teams are playing high-level defense. I really think that Florida Atlantic will struggle with San Diego State's depth. I think the Aztecs have a lot of talent, and they have so many players that can score the basketball, and they can mix and match players to stay fresh. But Florida Atlantic, John L. Davis is a really good player, and Vlad Golden's going to be tough to stop for San Diego State, and I think Dusty May's done a great job as their head coach, but Brian Dutcher, he even has more experience than Dusty May. I think this game's going to be a chess match between both coaches and both teams' players, and it should be a fantastic Final Four matchup that goes down to the wire. But I think San Diego State's depth and talent and experience will be a little bit too much for Florida Atlantic, and I'm going to go with San Diego State to beat Florida Atlantic 69-65, and I think the Aztecs will be going to the national championship game. Now on to the second game. The first game is a matchup between two smaller schools, but it still should be a lot of fun. But the second matchup has the UConn Huskies and the Miami Hurricanes. Neither team is a top seed or even a top 2 or 3 seed as well, which is really surprising. This is the first NCAA tournament to not have a top 3 seed in the Final Four. That is amazing, and I think overall it just goes to show you how much parity there was in this year's tournament. So many teams that could beat up on another team, and that is what's made this March Madness so awesome. But looking at Miami, they're not your average 5 seed. They had a great year in the ACC. I think they got shunned a bit because of the fact the ACC was a bit down this year, but Miami probably was a team that should have been higher than a 5 seed, and they're proving it right now. They're 29-7 and 15-5 in the ACC this season, and Jim Larinaga, this is the second time he's taken a team to the Final Four. Back in 2006, he took George Mason to the NCAA tournament, and he took him all the way to the Final Four, and that was a great run he did there. But now with the Miami Hurricanes, 17 years later, he's done it again. Miami's been in the Final Four, and they have a lot of weapons on the offensive end. Isaiah Wong averages 16.2 points per game. Isaiah Wong's one of the best guards in college basketball. He's not talked about enough. He's a great scorer. He can shoot free throws. He can make ridiculous shots off the dribble. And overall, he's going to be really dangerous for UConn to try to slow down because he's just really good on the offensive end. He's great at creating his own shot, and he's also just really good at getting to the foul line. But it doesn't stop there for Miami. Jordan Miller is averaging 15.4 points per game, and as the season's gone along, he's gotten better and better. He's a 6'7" wing that can drive and shoot, and he really makes it tough on opposing defenses to be able to slow him down. He's a mismatch nightmare for a lot of opposing teams' forwards. And looking at Jordan Miller against Texas, he didn't even miss a shot. He was 7-7 from the field and 13-13 at the free throw, and he had a perfect game. He probably won't have a perfect game this time around, but he still played it fantastic in that Texas game, and he's going to be a big reason why Miami gets to the national championship game if they do win. Nigel Pack's averaging 13.8 points per game. In the Kansas State transfer, he has been a problem for opposing defenses. He's only 6 foot, maybe not even that, but he is a tough guard to stop. He can get downhill and make tough shots just like Isaiah Wong. He's a deadly three-point shooter that has deep range of 35-foot plus feet, and I think that Nigel Pack's a big reason why Miami's been a better team this year than they were last year. And Miami went to the Elite Eight last year, so they were pretty solid last season as well. And Norchad Omier, the other addition for Miami, he's averaging 13.3 points per game as well. He's the biggest body the Hurricanes have at only 6'7", but he's built like a Mack truck. He is so tough to stop on the block. He gets a lot of rebounds even though he's undersized, and he's really going to make it tough on UConn's bigs because of how tough he is. But overall, UConn probably will have the advantage at the center position, and it's definitely not a surprise there. Wooga Poplar, though, is averaging 8.7 points per game as well. He's been a solid guard that's gotten better and better. But the other key for Miami is they have a lot of depth as as well. They have Bensley Joseph, Harlan Beverly, and Anthony Walker all playing solid minutes this season for Miami and getting a lot of points. And Miami this season's averaging 79.6 points per game on offense, and on defense they're giving up 71.9 points per game. So Miami's not as good of a defensive team as some of the other teams that are in this Final Four, but they're a great offensive team, and sometimes when they're really struggling in a game, they can just get hot from three and have a really good chance of being able to come back and win. But it will be tough for Miami to get the win because UConn is standing in their way, and the Huskies have been a great team all season long in the Big East. They're 29-8 and 13-7 in the Big East Conference this season, and Dan Hurley's done a phenomenal job with the Huskies this year because UConn started out 14-0, and a lot of people thought they were potentially the best team in college basketball, but then they really struggled in the beginning of Big East play. They lost 6 of 8 games, and a lot of people were off the UConn Huskies train, but they got things rolling down the stretch of the season. They lost to Marquette in the Big East tournament, but overall, they've started to play much better basketball, and it's carried over to the NCAA tournament, where they have not won a game in this tournament by less than 15 points. They beat St. Mary's by 15, and every other team they've played, UConn's won by over 20 points. That's amazing. That is showing dominance, and if they can keep that up, UConn will have a really good chance to win the whole entire thing this season. But you don't want to get ahead of yourself. You still got Miami sitting there in the Final Four matchup, but Adama Sanogo is averaging 17.1 points per game, and he is a very overlooked center in college basketball with Trace Jackson Davis, Zach Edey, Hunter Dickinson, Drew Timme, Oscar Tshiebwe, Armando Bacot, and so many other centers in college basketball. Adama Sanogo is a bit forgotten, but he's gotten much better this year. He can even knock down a three every now and then, something he could never do before. He's got much better at rebounding on the block, and he's just a dominant center who's had a great run this NCAA tournament with several close to 30-point games, and he's been a big reason for UConn's success this tournament. Jordan Hawkins is averaging 16.3 points per game. He's a really good secondary option when Adama Sanogo isn't having his best game for UConn, and Jordan Hawkins has gotten better and better as the season's gone along. He's playing much better basketball now than he was at the beginning of the season, and he's such a great player for UConn when the Huskies need a bucket of hitting a timely shot. And looking at the rest of UConn's roster, they don't have a lot of firepower, but they have a lot of depth as well, just like San Diego State. Tristan Newton, the ECU transfer, is averaging 9.9 points per game. He's a good passer. He sets up his teammates really well, and sometimes he doesn't score that much in some games, but when he's starting to make shots as well, it makes UConn a much more dangerous basketball team. Alex Caravan's averaging 9.5 points per game. He's a good shooter, and he's definitely hit some big shots in this NCAA tournament so far, so him making threes in this game will be really key for UConn to be able to counteract the three-headed monster of Nigel Pack, Isaiah Wong, and Jordan Miller that Miami has from shooting threes as well. Donovan Klingman's averaging 7.1 points per game off the bench. He comes in when Adama Sanogo sits, and Donovan Klingman is 7'2". He's a mountain of a man, and that's going to be really tough for Norchad Omier to stop. Definitely a big key for UConn will be to use their size advantage over Miami, and Adama Sanogo definitely has an advantage over Norchad Omier, but especially Donovan Klingman, who should be able to have some pretty big opportunities for dunks in this game. And Andre Jackson's averaging 6.8 points per game as well. He's a solid player for the Huskies, and they also have Joey Calcaterra, Naheem Aline, the Virginia Tech transfer, and Hassan Jara, the Texas A&M transfer. And Dan Hurley's done a great job assembling this roster. He's brought in a lot of transfers. He's recruiting much better at UConn now, and he brought a lot of their players back from last season. And UConn's just a really talented basketball team. And Miami's one of the deeper teams in the country this season in college basketball, but UConn definitely has the depth to match Miami and potentially exceed Miami in that front. And UConn this season is averaging 78.8 points per game on offense, and on defense, they're only giving up 64.4 points per game. UConn is a much better defensive team than Miami, and I think that's going to be a big key for the Huskies in this game. If UConn's able to slow Miami down, stop them from making threes, and UConn's able to use their physicality and their height advantage over Miami in this game, I think UConn will have a really good chance to win because of the fact the Huskies are a great defensive team, and they were able to have that much success on the defensive end in the rugged Big East, and they're a great offensive team as well. They only average one fewer point a game than Miami, and that's a really solid accomplishment for UConn in the tough Big East where a lot of the teams are good on defense. But I think that this game will be dominated by the offenses. Even though UConn is a good defensive team, I think that Miami will be able to score a lot of points. They've been a really confident team this tournament, making a lot of shots, but UConn's been the most dominant team in March Madness this year. I think this will be an elite Final Four game. I think Jim Larinaga will have his team ready to go, and I think that Dan Hurley will as well. Both teams are going to play to their strengths. Adama Sanogo, Donovan Kleeman will have big games for UConn, and I think that Isaiah Wong, Jordan Miller, and Nigel Pack will have great games for Miami, and I think that the offenses will rule the day, but I do think UConn's defense will be able to find a way to get a late game stop, and I'm going to go with the UConn Huskies to beat the Miami Hurricanes 84-82 in this Final Four game. I think it will be a thriller. It should be a fantastic game, and I'm looking forward to the Final Four this upcoming Saturday. Now, those are my Final Four picks. I'm picking San Diego State to beat Florida Atlantic 69-65, and I'm picking UConn to beat Miami 84-82. It's going to be interesting to see if I do pick the games right, but it should be a lot of fun. March Madness has delivered this year, and I don't think this Final Four is going to be any different. I think both these games are going to be fantastic basketball games, really close games. I think both games should go down to the wire, and I'm definitely looking forward to it, and it should be a lot of fun. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below who you think will win the Final Four games, which game you're looking forward to the most, and which teams you think will be in the national championship game. Follow me on Twitter as well, and I will see you next time.